I want to be sharing today from a topic that I've titled, Make That Change. Make that change. And I'll be sharing some insights that I learned from my weight loss journey. So I want to share a bit of my weight loss journey story with you. You know, I've always been big from when I was born, from when I was a teenager, not from when I was born. I've always been big as a teenager, but my real struggles with weight, began when I got married and started having children. I had my first child, and at my biggest, I weighed over 100 kg, and I was a size 22. And it was so funny because my husband would go from shop to shop to shop to shop looking for clothes. Not clothes that I like, but he would just ask them, what's the biggest size that you have in this place? And it was a nightmare. Sometimes you'd see this beautiful outfit, we'll try to shift the buttons and all of that. It's funny, but I believe somebody needs to be encouraged. Somebody needs to get on their journey of transformation and victory. Somebody just needs to hear something that will set them free. So sometimes I would have to shift the button. Now, my favorite outfit at that time was a black slacks, trousers that I had. It was my favorite, not because I loved the trouser, but it had an elasticated waistband, so it could fit in comfortably. And I would wear those black slacks with different big tops, Monday to Friday, because it was just comfortable, And about that time also was when I took a career break, because my second child came just almost immediately after the first one. So struggling with coping with the two children was just a nightmare. So I took a career break about that time as well. And when you are mostly at home, you just pile on the weight, and you keep piling on the weight without even realizing it until one day you want to dress up and things that used to fit before didn't fit anymore. So here I was 6 years down the line after my career break, over 100 kg. And one day, hear this, ladies, one day, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at myself. About this time, I was so dissatisfied. I was so unfulfilled because, when you take a career break, some other thing happens to you. Because you're not having communication with people outside, apart from your children. Sometimes your diction just falters, You begin to lose a sense of your own identity. So here I was one morning, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself over 100 kg, a size close to 22, I must have stood in front of that mirror for a very long time. Because when I left that mirror, something had shifted. Something had changed. And I knew that something had to change from that moment. I knew that I had to do something from that moment. I knew that I had gotten to the end of that state of being unfulfilled, and something needed to give way. So the first thing I did was to turn to God and just pour out my heart to God. My struggles with weight, the feelings of unfulfillment, the feelings of low self-esteem. That's what weight does to you, excess weight does to you. Robs you of your self-esteem, robs you of your confidence. So I poured out my heart to God, and I believe God answered that prayer in a funny way. Because the following day, I met a lady in church, and she gave me a book, Make the Connection. It's a book that was co-authored by Oprah Winfrey and Bob Greene. So in that book, it says, Make the Connection, 10 Steps to Building a Better Body. So in that book, as I read, I learned about the science of weight loss. All this thing they say, don't diet. I learned about the science of body fat, the science of weight loss, why you put on weight, why you don't put on weight. I learned about firing up your metabolic rate and all of that. I got information about, and I drew up a plan to begin that weight loss journey. But something critical happened about that time. When I turned to God with questions and asking for help, something began, because I was spending a lot more time in God's presence. Something began to happen to me. I began to dream. I began to envision. There was a sense of peace that came upon me that had eluded me before. But as I spent time in God's presence, I began to envision. I began to dream. I caught a picture of myself standing before a crowd, this slim lady standing before a crowd and teaching and inspiring people. But the funniest thing was that this picture that I caught was very far from my reality at that time. My reality at that time was this big lady, no confidence in herself, unfulfilled. But the vision I caught was of a slim lady who had been taking care of her weight, standing before a crowd. That was the dream that I caught in the presence of God. And as I caught that dream, because my brain had envisioned that dream, invariably, unconsciously, my life began to move towards that. I began to crave for knowledge. I began to crave for, seeking knowledge. I began to have a strong desire to lose that weight. So every day, Monday to Saturday, I would go out. I would commit that exercise session before God's hands, and I would go out. The only time I didn't exercise was Sunday. And within a short time, the weight began to fall off. At that same time, I began my vision of just speaking to people. I was gathering so much knowledge because of my quest for knowledge. I was gathering so much knowledge and sharing that knowledge with people. I want to share the lessons I learned from my weight loss journey, so that I believe God has a word for somebody that will help you get on your own journey. As a woman in your midlife, there is so much that you can do inside of you. There are books inside of you that needs to be written. There are changes you want to make. Peradventure, you want to lose that weight. You want to build that dream. You want to build that business. There must be something that you're dissatisfied with that you want to change. The first lesson I learned was, for true transformation to occur, you've got to get to a period of what I call an impasse, which was what happened to me that day in front of that mirror. An impasse is a state of flatness and restlessness and lack of fulfillment, where you say to yourself, something just has to give way. It cannot be business as usual. For true transformation to take place, you've got to get to that place. What you don't have a deep desire to change, that change will not come. Every change I've had to make in my life as a woman has begun from the place of impasse, what I call psychological impasse. I've had to come to the stage where I say, no more. I will not accept the status quo. Something just has to change. So for true transformation to take place, you've got to get to that place of restlessness and what I call the impasse. So that's the first lesson I learned. The second one is trust God with the process. Turn to God for help with the process. In the place of turning to God, there is an understanding and clarity that you get. In the place of turning to God, you begin to dream again. You begin to envision what life will be at the other side of the change. Whatever it is, whatever change you need to make. Is it the weight you want to lose, the business you want to start, the marriage you want to transform, your life you want, in every area of your life. The Bible says in 3 John 2, it says, Beloved, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. God is interested in every aspect of our lives. The mistake we make sometimes as Christians and as women is that God is just interested in the spiritual. No. He created every aspect of our lives. He's interested in every aspect of our life. So the second thing I learned is that whatever change you want to make in life, trust God with the process. Begin with a place of prayer. Begin in God's presence. Get clarity from Him. And then begin to dream again. The next thing I did in my own transformation story, which is the next insight I want to share, is I began to envision my next move. Now, to envision is to build an image of a desired future. It's imagining or visualizing a future possibility, okay? It's a stage where you catch a revelation of what is next. So when God called out Abraham, remember when God called out Abraham, He said, look at the stars. He says, your descendants will be like the stars. Even when He was taking the children to the promised land, He said to them, He says, the land, He kept telling them, the land which I'm taking you to is a land filled with milk and honey. It's a good land. What was God doing? He was building a desired expectation inside of them. It is difficult to build what you are not hungry for. It is difficult to make a change when you're not hungry for it. It is difficult to transition into something you're not hungry for. So God was creating a deep hunger in the hearts of the children of Israel because he knew that they would face challenges. They would face the giants, the Amalekites, and all of them. So he was creating that deep hunger inside of them. That's what happens to you in the place of envisioning. Because you have visualized something, there is a deep hunger inside of you. So even if in the face of challenges or whatever, you move towards because that hunger is driving you. Some other thing happens in the place of envisioning. See, the brain is a pattern matching organ. The brain is a pattern matching organ. When the brain catches a picture of something, unconsciously, it begins to will the body towards that thing. And that was what happened to me. My brain had caught a picture of this slim lady teaching and inspiring women. Unconsciously, my body began to move towards what my brain had envisioned. Envisioning is a spiritual, psychological, management, business concept. It is the brain catching a picture of what it has seen. And then it wills the body to move towards it. Now, after you have envisioned, what next? You then need to step out to create what you have envisioned. Transformation is not complete. The process of transformation, of making that change, of initiating that project or whatever, is never ever complete unless you begin to build it. You've got to take the first step to do it. Otherwise, it will never be done. No matter how good a plan is, it remains just a good plan if you don't take action to initiate it. So the first step I did was to come up with a vision board. A vision board is just a visual representation of what you want to accomplish. Come up with a visual board. What is it that you want? What change do I want to make? What would life look like after I make that change? What will change? What will the environment be like? How would I feel? Use words that will show the emotions that you will feel after that change is accomplished. Happy, fulfilled, satisfied, happy. Put all of that in your vision board and then position that vision board in a visual place where you can see it. Maybe your fridge, a place where you pass through everything. And then affirm that change, affirm that vision, validate it every day, affirm it, and watch God back you up. People do not wander around Mount Everest and get to the top. No. A climber who wants to climb Mount Everest, he doesn't just wander around it and gets to the top. No. He comes up with a plan. And then he begins one step at a time. Apostle Paul said, forgetting the things that are behind. Philippians 3. He says, I forget the things that are behind. And I reach ahead for the things that are in front. He says, I press towards the mark. As a woman in your middle years, there is so much in front of you. There's so much you have to reach out to. There's so much change you can make. There's so much you can transform. There's so much you can build. There's so much you can initiate. And my question to you is, will you arise today and begin to envision and build that which you have envisioned? God bless you.